Good morning and welcome to my garden. I've lived in this location for about 18 years, and this is a very large rock cut that we sort of had to work on over the years to decide what plants would love it here and what plants would hate it here. It's been quite a process. Some plants are loving the heat, a lot of heat, south facing, and some plants don't do very well. I find that the succulent plants do quite well, but I've also tossed in things that don't normally do well in sun, such as hostas. And this time of the year they'll look pretty good, but by the time we get to the summer they'll look pretty drained, and so usually I just trim them back. They will blossom in the fall, and they'll look quite nice with the sedum that I have. At the top of the garden is my butterfly garden, so I have quite a bit of milkweed in the top there, and I do raise monarchs. The milkweed sort of just populated on its own, and I have a friend who got me interested in working with the monarchs. So last year was the first year, so I only raised 6 last year. My ambition is to double that this year. And so luckily I have my own little supply of milkweed up there. I don't have any eggs as of yet, but hopefully that'll be coming. So this is my front east-facing flower bed. I do tend to supplement a lot in this area with annuals because I haven't quite found the right perfect combination in my mind of perennials that I'd like to have. I've added in a rose this year to give it some more color. But I do have some heuchera, I have a hawthorn bush, some Karl Forester grass, foxglove, my poor little lonely foxglove there. I have added this year 2 of the Arctic foxglove, which are supposedly a perennial, so hopefully they'll do well. And then in the corner I have my little limelight hydrangea. So, and there's also a few echinacea and some daisies as well as the sedum. So I do have a bit of a spring, summer and fall look to it, which is kind of my overall plan for all the garden. So this is the south side of the house, the south-facing garden, and in this garden I have my fairy garden. So over the last few years I've been collecting pieces here and there. Some things I've made and other things I've just bought either online or locally. I do have 4 grandchildren. My granddaughter particularly loves this fairy garden because it's a place she can come to play, and she's the one who's put out all the characters this year, so I've just left it for her and her imagination, and she's got quite a few stories to tell with each of the little spaces that she's put them in. Some of the flowers in this side of the house, I have the Goldstrum rudbeckia, which is probably about 3 feet tall now, which will end up being about 6 feet tall by the time all the blossoms and stalks come. And then in behind that I've planted some giant sunflowers, is what the package was called. But I also have some echinacea in this flower bed, some lilies, some Solomon seal. I have a hellebore that's still flowering in the front, some salvia. And then just in the last 2 years I've decided that I would like to try growing roses. So this was my first little project that I've done here. So I have the fairy statue watching over the garden, and then on either side I have a hybrid tea rose. The one on the left is called JFK, and it'll be white. The one on the right is pink, and unfortunately I don't remember the name. And then in the back this year I planted the peach colored Floribunda. So I'm learning as I go with the roses. In behind the roses, I've planted some glads, and hopefully they'll come along. I also have some liatris, and in and amongst all of the other things, I have some purple and pink monarda. Down front in the little fairy garden, along with the gnomes, I have a little bunny tail grass, which I just planted last year and seems to be doing okay this year. And then I have the large peony. I'm not entirely sure of the variety, but that peony's been there for about 15 to 16 years, so it's quite a large peony. And then some bearded iris and some Siberian iris. So in this little part of the south side garden, I've planted some plants that don't particularly like the sun, but seem to do fairly well. So I have some hostas here in the front that I transplanted last year, but they seem to be doing well, and they do get a little bleached out with the sun in the summer, but overall they generally are okay. Again, I've repeated the Goldstrum Rudbeckia, which is about, again, 3 feet, but it'll be probably about 6 feet by the time it's done, and back planted that again with the giant size sunflowers, which you can't see now, but we'll eventually be able to see. This is a little bug house in the center that my husband built for me, an idea I saw on Pinterest, and just collected the materials. So that was a COVID project from last year. In behind the bug house is a Japanese anemone, which is a really aggressive spreader, part of the I Should Have Known Better group. But I just go about taking it out every year. I just cut it back a little bit more and try to keep it contained. Eventually, maybe I may try to find a spot for it to grow and just let it go, because it is quite beautiful, and the bumblebees do actually really, really love it. The flowers are very pretty pink. And they're usually very full of bumblebees when they come out. I've also added to this bed a drift rose, again trying to learn some knowledge about roses. So hopefully I'll be able to gather that one along. Also in the blank spot there, I did take some seeds from the Horticultural Park seed hut. So I've planted some Matsumoto asters in there. And some sunflowers, so hopefully they'll come along as well. In the front is a little the seed pods from a pasque flower, which I tend to leave just because I like the interest that the seed pods have. And I've also added a little prairie smoke flower this year, so we'll see how he does next year, and the seed pods will be equally as interesting. So this little section of the garden has come a long way from where it was. It was actually just 2 years ago, it was just grass in front. So I added the little flower bed, and in this flower bed I have another peony, the darker purple. And then on the left-hand side I have a dappled willow, which originally started out as a bush, and then I read online where you could train it to be sort of a lollipop version. So this year I trimmed everything off of it except for the top, and then it donated me the bottom. So now I'll have to go back in and trim that down. I'm really trying to get it to grow a little bit taller, and I'd really like it to stay in that sort of a lollipop shape. Then on the right hand side is a hydrangea. I believe it's called strawberry vanilla. It's a panicle hydrangea, so its blooms will be white on the top and pink on the bottom, and then just underplanted with hosta and then the Dusty Miller in the front. The statue is called Tranquility. I purchased her from a lady just outside of Kingston in Westbrook. She's where I get all of my concrete statues from, so she's just a new addition. Actually, last week we put her in. This is my little vegetable garden that I have here, again on the south side of the house. This is a little 8x8 structure built to this height to deter the deer and some of the smaller animals, rabbits and so on that we have. Right now I just have cold crops in there and my tomatoes, but there's only 2 of us in the house, so I don't tend to grow a ton of veggies. I have beets, lettuce, some peas. My strawberries are covered up right now because the birds seem to want to take all the berries once the flowers are done. And then this year, my first attempt at watermelon and cantaloupe. And in the back, I've kept one of my giant sunflowers. So I'll have some seed for next year. So now we're moving towards the north side of the property. This little flower bed I created sort of just out of the little pile of rocks there, just adding some soil and some rocks around the front. And then I've put this little fairy in the front. He again is one I got from the same lady in Kingston. And I've just put a solar powered gazing ball. So it gathers up all the energy in the daytime and then you can see it at night and it glows. And I leave them out winter and summer. So it'll glow all year round. And so this little garden just has some verbena planted in the front, and then the little pink flowers in the back are columbine. There's some echinacea in there. I can't remember the name of the grass that's growing in the front. There's also some catmint in there, and then a few little succulents planted underneath. The long grass that's growing under the little tree there is sort of just appeared on its own, and I like the way the structure of it looks with the tree, and I like the movement of the grass, so I've just chosen to leave it. This side is the north side of the house continued. In this little garden I sort of have a mix of some annuals and some perennials. Again, some Solomon seal and some hosta, which does get a bit of sun and will fade a little bit, but generally they do fairly well. I also have some Monarda in here, and tucked in behind the little milk can I have a Bobo hydrangea. I've also put some zinnia seeds into this flower bed, and I think I see some sunflowers that have voluntarily grown there, but we'll leave those there as well. I have some snapdragon, some more zinnia, and some sedum and a Carl Forester grass there, continued over from the front. The next few little sections of rock here were very hard to grow things in, but I've found this miscanthus grass. So it's actually 2 layers. I have the giganteus, I believe it's called, in the back layer, and then a shorter version in the front. In the first bed there I also have a lovely spiderwort that won't go away, but it's pretty now, and when the flowers are done I'll just trim it back so that it looks a little tidier. Some of them have like some stripes on them as well, sort of reminds me of corn, but there's 2 layers there as well. They grow about 4 and 5 feet, whereas the miscanthus will probably get up to about 6 to 10 feet. Beyond that, I have another little shorter grass which blooms pink. So it has the tiniest little pink blossoms on it. And then I have some volunteer growers, some daisies, some wild daisies, and some phlox, which I'm guessing the birds planted for me. And then beyond that, oh, and I have a chipmunk. And then beyond that I have some more plants in the lower part of the bed.